But everything we know about sports performance and endurance really can be explained by nitric oxide. It's what improves oxygen delivery, improves mitochondrial function. So when these athletes, really the top athletes in the world, are optimize their nitric oxide, then that's what makes them the athletes they are. They can go harder, stronger, longer, faster. Not only are we providing nitric oxide to enhance circulation and energy production, but we've titrated up your energy stores in the form of ATP. I mean, that's an incredible, there's no product like it on the market. It's the best energy and pre-workout product in the world, hands down.
Okay, episode 2. Welcome to the Heartbeat Happy Hour. I'm your host, Anthony Turturro. I'm here with my dear friend, Dr. Bryan. How are you, sir?
Good, great. Good to see you.
Good. So, what's been going on?
Crazy busy.
Yeah, aren't we all?
Lots of travel, a lot of good things going on, new product development, spreading the gospel around nitric oxide. Here we are.
I tried that new product last night. Incredible.
Yeah, this is a game changer. I mean, this will truly, maybe one of our greatest inventions and product technologies that we're bringing to market. This will change the landscape of medicine and really human optimization and personal health as we know it.
And it's crazy too. It starts just with your morning daily routine.
It's how we start the day.
I'm really excited to launch that. We need to get that thing going. Right, coming soon, probably here in about 3 months. So wait for the drop. Stay tuned. Yeah. So let's talk about sport today. Okay. Sport performance, recovery. We've done a lot of work with athletes in the past from products that we've worked on together. Pro teams, collegiate teams, Olympic athletes, Ironman athletes, you name it, right? Where do you see nitric oxide playing a key role in sport performance?
Well, I think it's the science tells us that it's key to performance. I went to the University of Texas spring game on Saturday. It looked good. They've been taking our products for many years, and, it shows on the field. But everything we know about sports performance and endurance really can be explained by nitric oxide. It's what improves oxygen delivery, improves mitochondrial function. So when these athletes, really the top athletes in the world, are optimize their nitric oxide, then that's what makes them the athletes they are. They can go harder, stronger, longer, faster, because of their ability to produce nitric oxide. Or when they take our products, that enhances their own nitric oxide ability, that improves their performance.
Yeah, I remember working with some of them, and specifically different fields of sport seek different benefits, right, for recovery and so forth. I remember like baseball pitchers with shoulder recovery and so forth. And I'm trying to remember the speed to recovery. Wasn't there some kind of improvement once taking nitric oxide?
Well, look, it's really recovery, because soreness and muscle fatigue comes from what's called anaerobic metabolism. So when your muscles run out of oxygen, they start to basically use anaerobic respiration. You get lactic acid buildup. That lactic acid in the muscle is what causes soreness. But if you can improve mitochondrial function, improve energy production, and improve the efficiency of oxygen utilization, then you don't get lactic acid buildup. You push back that anaerobic threshold, and recovery becomes much better.
Interesting. So someone that's doing long distance, for example, would they need to take a lozenge mid-run, say mile 12 or something like that?
Well, that's the beauty of it. I mean, everything in physiology is kind of production versus consumption, right? So there's a flux rate of any protective molecule. So nitric oxide, the better trained athletes, the more nitric oxide you make upon starting exercise. But then obviously you consume that the longer you go. And so when you run out of oxygen, you run out of nitric oxide. When you run out of nitric oxide, you run out of oxygen. So what we found is these protocols, especially on, Ironman, these, multiple hour races, that you start with the nitric oxide. I like the beet powder because that provides kind of a time release of nitric oxide. Okay. But the beauty of the lozenge, you can put it in your pocket, you take them with you, and then mid-race, if you feel like you're hitting the wall, pop the lozenge, get you to the next stage. And there we go. We've titrated up your kind of reservoirs of nitric oxide, so it allows you to go longer, stronger, faster without running out of oxygen.
Hitting back on something, you created a product in Obeats that you just mentioned, which included ATP.
That's right.
Can you harp on that a little bit?
Yeah, so everything we do revolves around nitric oxide. So if your body can't make nitric oxide, we do it for you. But we can also apply these same principles to other things. If you have mitochondrial dysfunction and your body can't make ATP, then what do you got to do? We got to give it to you. We got to give it for you. Right? So the NO beads contains nitric oxide. We put electrolytes in there to improve cellular hydration. Okay. And we add the mitochondrial ATP. So we're basically, again, titrating up your ATP stores. So now you've got an energy reservoir. Not only are we providing nitric oxide to enhance circulation and energy production, but we've titrated up your energy stores in the form of ATP. I mean, that's an incredible, there's no product like it on the market. It's the best energy and pre-workout product in the world, hands down.
For our viewers at home that aren't that familiar with mitochondrial, could you explain a little bit more on that? So
the mitochondria are the energy-producing organelles of the cell.
Okay.
So every cell, and basically, the function of a cell is dependent upon the number of mitochondria per cell and how efficiently those mitochondria produce energy. And so every age-related disease is associated with mitochondrial dysfunction and lower numbers of mitochondria per cell. The beauty of nitric oxide is it induces mitochondrial biogenesis. Okay. So that cell has more mitochondria and it improves the efficiency of energy production. So when you give nitric oxide or you produce nitric oxide, you have greater mitochondrial function and greater mitochondrial density. Now you become a well-oiled machine. But without nitric oxide, none of that happens.
Okay. How do you fit in the new trend of cold plunge and things of that nature?
Well, it's all about regulation of blood flow, and it's what's called hormesis. It's brief periods of shock that then allows these adaptive effects of the human body. And so cold plunge is all about regulation of blood flow. So when you get in an ice bath or a cold plunge, basically all the peripheral blood vessels constrict because it tries to divert the blood supply internally to preserve the heat. Because if you dilate the peripheral blood vessels, you get heat exchange, so you're losing heat. So then what happens, you get constriction of the peripheral blood vessels, and then it basically directs all the blood flow internally to preserve that heat. And then when you get out, you get vasodilation, and now you've restored. So it's basically exercising your blood vessels. And so it's the brief periods, but also the other adaptive effects of that is it turns, white fat into brown fat. And what does that mean? That induces mitochondrial biogenesis. So mitochondria are kind of what makes the fat brown. It's what, in chicken, you got dark meat and white meat. The dark meat is the meat that has more mitochondria. It's really the fast twitch muscles.
Okay.
Right. And so that is what we do when you're making brown fat. It's thermogenesis. It increases your basal metabolic rate. So you burn more calories. And it's a proven time, tested, proven kind of technique to allow for the regulation of blood flow.
That's awesome. If you learned anything at home, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe for more. So what other type of products would you, and not by name or anything like brand, but types of products would you recommend from both pre and post
workouts?
Yes.
I think we have to give the body what it needs to do its job and then allow for adequate recovery. And so this involves giving certain nutrients, either macronutrients in terms of protein, carbs, and fats, and micronutrients. So what I like to do in kind of my personal routine, which I think works well for me, is I take an algae product, a chlorella and spirulina. It contains a lot of micronutrients, but it also acts as a binder, and it can help bind toxins, whether you're exposed to toxins or whether it's a metabolic waste product that you're producing during exercise. That helps bind the toxins and you excrete it out. So that combined with the NO beads and the nitric oxide is really what, and depending upon what type of exercise you're doing, you need to fuel based upon that type of exercise.
Okay. So back to the NO beads product. How would you recommend someone actually takes that? Would they do it pre-workout? Would they do it post-workout for recovery? Mix it with anything?
Look, the bead product is kind of a standalone nitric oxide. So we position that either as an energy product, an afternoon pick-me-up, or a pre-workout. And the beauty of it is you don't have to take it 90 minutes before your workout, because as soon as it hits solution, it generates nitric oxide gas. And so when you take that, then we're actually producing nitric oxide, we're enhancing blood flow, and basically priming the body for energy production. So you can take it, as soon as you're walking in the gym, take it immediately. And I think that's what's going to allow you to perform better, but also allow you to recover. And so there's no need to take anything else with it because we're providing the electrolytes, we're providing the mitochondrial ATP, and we're providing the nitric oxide.
Okay, 2 parts I want to harp on. 1 was the energy, and 2 was the mixing it when you go into the gym. Do I mix it with cold water, hot water? What if I put it in Gatorade, so forth, or something with acidity to it? Does that affect the product at all?
Yeah, look, acid's going to facilitate the production of nitric oxide, so similar to swallowing it and hitting the acid environment of the stomach. So if you're putting it in something that's acidic like a juice, you want to make sure you take it immediately.
Okay.
And that's why we developed it as a shot. So you can't put it in 16 ounces of water and then sip on it over the next, half hour or hour. Mm-hmm. As soon as you put it in solution, you got to take it immediately because it starts generating nitric oxide as soon as it hits solution. Okay. And really, there's no need to mix it with anything. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Gatorade because it has a lot of sugar in there.
Yeah.
But it's best just mix it with water, like room temperature water. Mix it in there with a frother or mix it really quickly and then take it as a shot.
A frother?
A frother.
You carry one of those around with you, right?
Actually, I do.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, energy-wise, we were talking about cellular energy with the ATP. Most people, when hearing energy, think caffeine, a pump. Are you talking about the same thing or a different type of feeling?
Well, no, energy, from my perspective, as a biochemist and physiologist, is all about the energy currency of the cell. Okay. It's how well the mitochondria are. So if you have mitochondrial dysfunction, you're never going to have energy. You get fatigue, you get lethargy. So what we try to do at the cellular level or subcellular level is improve energy production. And then energy, to a lot of people, it's all about perception, right? So what is energy? For me, again, it's the energy currency of the cell's ability to produce ATP. But energy for a lot of people is, can I get through the day without being tired? Can I walk up a flight of steps without getting short of breath? And if you're an athlete, it's really, how do I get through a 2 to 3 hour, whether it's an NBA basketball game or an NFL football game or a baseball game, these are hours that you have to, especially baseball or soccer, for example. I mean, these are really intense types of activities. Most people, as you said, think of energy as all these caffeine and these stimulants. Mm-hmm. I mean, caffeine, the clinical data on caffeine is as an ergogenic aid is pretty indisputable. But caffeine's a vasoconstrictor. Yeah. So it allows you to have a perceived less exertion. But energetically and at the cellular level, it's really not providing any source of energy. So what we try to do in our NO Beats products is there's no stimulants, there's no caffeine. We're basically improving circulation, improving oxygen delivery, improving mitochondrial function, and improving the energy currency of the cell. And then that'll translate into perceived energy, a feeling of kind of well-being. And if you're an athlete, it's certainly going to enhance your performance.
Okay, that's interesting. A lot of athletes love to travel to altitude to train before a UFC fight or what have you, right? And typically they'll go up quite a bit, about a month ahead or a couple weeks ahead and so forth. We've talked in the past, and nitric oxide plays a big role with oxygen efficiency, right? Yep. So are these athletes consciously, subconsciously, not even realizing that the altitude and training in the altitude is actually increasing their nitric oxide levels, which is giving them the benefits of cardiovascular stamina and so forth? What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, we published on this in 2007 where we took people that live in Tibet, which is at the base of the Himalayas, 12,000 feet above sea level. So obviously the partial pressure of oxygen is much lower at altitude. So the question was, how do these people adapt to that low oxygen environment? Because they don't have high altitude pulmonary edema. They're not developing altitude sickness. They live up there and they thrive in that environment. But if we go to altitude, we'll get a headache, you get altitude sickness. If you're really unhealthy, you can develop high altitude pulmonary edema. And sometimes that's fatal. Many times it's fatal. So when athletes go to altitude, so we also know that the kidneys start to induce a molecule called erythropoietin. Then it induces an increase in hematocrit, more red blood cells, more oxygen carrying capacity. So that's part of the mechanism. But what we discovered is that probably the most protective benefits of altitude training is you're slowly amping up your ability to produce nitric oxide. So we make them Tibetan-like, right? So when there's less oxygen, you basically have to improve your nitric oxide production to lead to more efficient oxygen delivery, because with each breath, you're breathing in less oxygen. But these Tibetans, through their adaptive effects and ability to increase their nitric oxide, actually deliver more oxygen per unit time than we living at sea level. So when athletes go there, which are well-trained, have good endothelial function, lower oxygen, the body adapts by increasing nitric oxide. So if you go to, Colorado or Mexico City, 5,000-6,000 feet above sea level, and you spend 2 to 3 days there, you can see an increase in your nitric oxide production. Okay. And then if you, really do high intensity interval training, less oxygen, you get a better adaptive effects, more nitric oxide being produced. So now when you come back down to sea level, you're like a nitric oxide generating machine, and that's what allows you to outcompete the competition.
Right. How long does that last once you get back to sea level to where your body then adapts back?
It's probably several days. There's always an adjustment of the human body to its any given environment. But that's also important. And so that's what we call environmentally induced hypoxia. But there's also kind of a pathological induced hypoxia or ischemia. So if you have COPD or emphysema or coronary artery disease, then your body's compromising the ability to deliver oxygen to those organs, tissues, and cells. So what do? We have to increase our nitric oxide production. Okay. But in patients that have endothelial dysfunction, they can't increase their nitric oxide production, so they never get better. And that's what we do, is we basically restore the function of the endothelium. So now the body can adapt to make its own nitric oxide in response to brief periods of hypoxia or ischemia. That's the adaptive effects.
So at your ranch, you have a hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah.
Does that play the same kind of role?
Well, that basically improves the saturation of oxygen, dissolved oxygen. Okay. So we're using high pressure. So we're basically trying to super-oxygenate the tissue. So in patients with concussion or traumatic brain injury or non-healing wounds, we want to oxygenate and improve oxygen delivery. Mm-hmm. And really what we're doing is we're just forcing through high pressure the increased oxygen saturation in solution. We're really not affecting the oxygen carrying capacity of the hemoglobin, but it's basically improving the solubility of oxygen through high pressure. But the beauty of that is if you take our nitric oxide, now you're dilating the small blood vessels, and now you're going to basically enhance delivery of that oxygen through hyperbaric.
That's, and to that point, this is why I asked the question about if you should take pre-workout or post, right? And depending on if you are doing a 4-hour run or so forth, training for a marathon, say your training schedule has a half marathon in it, would it still benefit you to take a nitric oxide product following to really help with the recovery and the delivery of nutrients following?
Yeah, well, everything we know about performance or recovery is dependent upon the blood, the cardiovascular system to take in the nutrients and then get rid of the waste products. Yeah. If you have compromised circulation, you're not only going to get delivery of the nutrients, but you're going to get a buildup of the waste products. So you can't take out the trash, right? So we have to be able to improve nitric oxide production, open up the blood vessels, deliver the good stuff, excrete the metabolic waste material, and then you have great recovery. So it depends upon what type of exercise you're doing in terms of timing of when you take the nitric oxide to improve performance and improve recovery.
Okay. Do you ever think you'll make some kind of nitric oxide protein?
Look, we're always trying to push the envelope and understand human performance and then provide the body what it needs to optimize performance. And we know the data out there on branched chain amino acids and turning on protein synthesis and turning off protein degradation to prevent muscle loss, bone loss, is an important aspect of recovery, especially the older we get, our protein requirements increase. But if we can figure out how to turn off protein degradation and turn on protein synthesis, then that's kind of the metabolic switch. We think nitric oxide is part of that. Nitric oxide is foundational for everything we do, but there are other things we can do to enhance that. And a simple solution is branched chain amino acids and, looking at the protein machinery of the cell.
So if someone's trying to get fit or training for some kind of athletic event or anything like that, what type of diet would you recommend that would overall help naturally produce nitric oxide, but also general well-being?
Again, it depends upon what type of exercise it is because there's not a one-size-fits-all, right? So if you're doing, high-intensity, brief periods of explosive type movements like, a skill player in football or basketball, then you've got to really, fuel up with carbs because that's kind of your first kind of fuel reservoir that you're burning. Now, if you're doing, if you're not that active, then probably you need to limit carbs because, if you overdo it, it'll be stored as fat. But so I think it's different in terms of improving nitric oxide. Some more green leafy vegetables, but again, based on the data we published in 2015, depending on where you live, what vegetables you're eating, you may or may not be getting enough. So, and that's why we take kind of the guesswork out of it. We provide products that provide an optimal amount of nitric oxide So you don't have to worry about if you're getting enough green leafy vegetables. We do it for you. We've taken the guesswork out.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for all the information today.
Thank you.
And for you at home, if you learned anything, liked what you saw, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for future updates. Also, check out in the description, we are including a link where if you hit that link, it'll take you to a store and you'll be able to see actually all the products that Nathan himself takes in case you are interested, as you mentioned, the algae product and some of the other ones you take. So be sure to check that out and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.